If it's one thing that I've always known, well, I can't say always known, because I had to go through a period in coming to realize that what's separating and destroying the world and basically ruling the world is information. And then once I started studying closely about how the Creator wanted mankind not to consume the knowledge of good and evil, which to my understanding is religion, because that's pretty much what religion is based upon, good and evil. And it's information, it's knowledge. And so that makes you question, before Adam and Eve was exposed to this information by way of Eve's treachery and Adam's irresponsibility, what state of mind were they in? They wasn't in any state of mind, because to be in a particular state of mind, you have to have a degree of information, therefore a degree of knowledge, in order to have a measurement of thoughts and thought patterns based upon perceptions, which are dual components. Within information, you have the potential, due to the dual factor inside information, to utilize information either for the sake of goodness or the sake of war, good or warfare. The reason why religion causes so much conflict is because you are not dealing with facts. Any information that you accumulate, to me, if you have to end up believing it, it means that it contains a dual component. You can either believe it or not believe it. And when you have mankind's individual experiences leading to the point to where when they accumulate this particular information based upon the past and everything that they've learned and everything that they've been through, based upon the psychological effects, the emotional effects, which forms a specific convictions in which sets up a particular mentality that they decide to govern themselves with. Due to everybody having individual experiences within the same society, due to the fact that everyone has similar experiences, because we're all existing in this same social environment. You're going to have some people who perceive things one way, and you're going to have some people who perceive things another way, or you're going to have your similarities of what you both can relate to, but not completely relate to, because you're individuals and you experience individual meanings and perceptions of things. So you're going to have some differences due to the fact, even though you share similar experiences, due to the fact you're going to have some differences because you're both individuals who have individual and personal understanding of things. That and other areas of information, it has to be understood. Coming from a man as myself, it took me a long time to find out that I didn't have any external enemies in my life. It took me to go through a lot to understand who the real enemy was, and it wasn't no devil. If it was a devil, it was me. It was me. Everything that I thought and a whole lot of the mistakes that I made It was me that made those mistakes. The devil didn't influence me to do anything. Now, there is an evil entity that is of spirit, and it's not this theological person called the devil or Satan. All of that is inside of you because we were created as dual human beings from a creator that is in fact dual. You know, don't ever let anyone tell you that God is all good, because it tells you I created peace and I created war. I created good and I created evil. I, the Lord, created all of these things. So the greatest challenge is going to always be ourselves. This is the reason why Jesus had said, or Yeshua had said, go and sin no more. You can stop it. We can stop it ourselves. We just have to stop it. You know, people say, well, I'm working on it. If you're working on it, it only implies you're not serious. You actually can stop it. And if we don't want to always get beat down by nature, for us to understand that, okay, I get it. I done lost my home. I done lost a few of my loved ones. Okay, Lord, I get it now. What makes us think that we are so important that someone else has to die in order for us to get our act together? We are not that important. So if we are not that important, then what is the problem? It's ourselves. We are at war with ourselves. And we are in an environment to where every single day there's a lesson. You don't accumulate any information that is not based upon yourself. I don't care what information it is. The way we respond to things, the way we react to things, we have to pay very close attention to all of those things, because that is exactly the journey of learning self. And if you can think back every day at your actions or your words or the way you say certain things to other human beings and the way certain things make you feel, and always examine yourself. You know, I could have said this better. I could have said this a little bit more in humility. I could have said this nicer. You know? And that way, you're working your way inwardly and you're making all of the corrections. And the more corrections that you make of yourself, the more you grow and the more you mature and the closer you are able to get to the kingdom of heaven that is within you. And if we all take our times to do some self-examination instead of always looking at one another, telling each other, well, you could do this better or you can do that better. Well, you know, communication could be better as well. Let's stop the criticism and start advising one another where we can do better without making a person feel as though they're being attacked and condemned, because that's not helping anyone. That's not helping anyone. So it's not always what you believe. It's about how you distribute what you say you believe. If you believe that strongly, good for you. But the way that you come across, if your belief is forcing you to attack people, then what you believe, you need to find another belief system, because this belief system that you've given yourself to and that you're under, it seems like a tool to attack and condemn people. my previous video, what I pointed out is the fact that Yeshua had pointed to a reality that is sitting up inside of every created and living human being. That you can do it yourself. You can save yourself. When he said, I am the way, the truth, and the light, and none can get to the Father except through me, my example, not him in particular. When he said through me, he was referring to him being the example. I say again, when he said, go and sin no more, he did not imply that he was going to assist. He never told you to pray to the Father to sin no more. That's not what he said. He said, go and sin no more. And sin no more. He did not imply that I'm going to show you how to not do it anymore. He did not instruct you and us and we to end it by way of the help of the divine creator. He said, go and sin no more. Further, scripture that I had mentioned. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves, and pray, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. That implies the non-cooperation of the Creator, but for the individual human being to make up their own minds, to turn from their wicked ways. You can do it yourself. Brother Miles Davis, there was a time to where he was a tremendous drug addict, and he saw that it was in the process of killing him. So he ventured to his father, who had a farm. I forget where it was, but it doesn't matter. And if it matters to you, look it up. I'm just getting to the point. When he returned to his father's barn, he told his father, no matter what you hear, do not open up that barn. The reason why he told his father that is because he was getting ready to go in there and suffer through the process of his withdrawal from the drugs. And he told his father to lock him in that barn, and no matter what he heard, and no matter how much he begged his father to open up that barn, he told his father, don't let me out. He had explained that the first few days were terrible, and he had begged his father to let him out. but it's one thing that he had noticed. He said that each day his suffering became less and less. And so he understood that there is a healing element and a healing entity present within time in terms of the withdrawing from the clutches of the drugs that he was on. So therefore he got to a point to where he was able to suffer it alone, to the capacity that his ailing period wasn't so loud to the degree that his father came, who was tempted to open up the barn. But he told his father, "Don't let me out, don't let me out." So his father would come and check on him to make certain that he was still living. But Miles never said, "Okay, I'm ready. You can let me out now." So as time went on, he suffered through the withdrawal to the degree he knew at a specific point in time through his suffering that he was no longer feeling withdrawal. And therefore, he was free from even the wanting of the drugs in order to so-called relieve his pain, because he understood that that's not a pain relief, that's a going back into addiction, which is causing pain. And therefore he wasn't manipulated by the state of no longer suffering pain. I bring that up because when I was driving the bus out here in Las Vegas, I was doing a route called the 214, which was and still is the D Street and the 8th Street. There was a young man who used to get on my bus all the time, and I knew that he was doing something. But one particular night, when he got off the bus, he stood outside the bus door after I let him off, and he looked at me and he said, "Dave, you know, I listened to you talk on the bus about a lot of things," and he said, "I really need to get my life together." He said, "I'm struggling with drugs, Dave." He said, "I know that you see that, but you never mentioned it." And he said, "Sometimes I wish you would have mentioned it." He said, "But I'm letting you know that I'm getting ready to go through withdrawal." And he said, "I'm not going to go into any institution that's going to help me withdraw." He said, "Because to me, that's not withdrawal." He said, "Withdrawal is when you honestly do it yourself and not the help from any other drug that makes the withdrawal easier." He said, "I don't want the easy way out." And he broke down and he cried. He said, "I'm getting ready to go through this withdrawal." And he said, "The next time you see me, it's either going to be in the casket or you're going to be looking at a man who is no longer a drug addict." And he walked away. 7.5 months later, I saw him again. And he looked much better. And he said to me, I'm clean, Dave. I've gotten over my drug addiction. And he said, you know what? He said, that house that I used to go in all the time to get my drugs, he said, I won't even walk down that street anymore. He said, I don't even want to go in that place anymore. He said, I'm afraid to go in there. I told him, well, then you're not done. You're still an addict. And he thought that I was playing devil's advocate. And most would seem as though that's exactly what I was doing, but I wasn't. I told him, you want to know when you are no longer an addict? He said, what's that? I said, if you can go down that block and no longer feel tempted to go in there, then you're on your way there. He said, what do you mean feel tempted to go in there? I told him there's a dual component to everything. You either feel tempted to go in there and use, or you feel tempted to go in there so that you can help others to get out. I said, are you ready to do that or the other? I said, where is your heart in terms of this? I said, you can't be afraid to walk down that street. You have to know that you're no longer an addict. You can't just believe it. I said, you have to know it, bro. And you will never know until you walk through those doors again. And he looked at me and he said, bro, you are an evil dude. He said, I see this other side of you. And he walked away. 3 weeks later, he came to me. He said, Dave, I want to apologize to you about something. I said, what's that? He said, I called you the devil. He said, but I found myself walking down that street. I said, what do you mean you found yourself walking down the street? He said, I found myself walking down that street. He said, what you told me obviously had some type of subconscious effect on me. And so I found myself walking down the street. And he said, the temptation was not to go in and use again. He said, because I felt so free and I felt so proud of my progress that the temptation was not to go use, but to free others as I strive to free myself. And I asked him, I said, did you do it? He said, no, but I will. I had my off days the next 2 nights, and then when I came to work, I didn't see him on my first day back to work, but I saw him on my second day. And he got on my bus and he immediately smiled at me and he shook my hand and he gave me a white rose. Now, as odd as this may sound, this is what happened. He rode around with me. And see, the 214 goes all through the west side, and then it used to go downtown to this place called the DTC, of where all the buses would pause and everyone would take their 20-minute break. So we rode all the way downtown. And A lot of people on the bus was talking that stuff because here's a black man who gave another black man a white rose. And of course, where our minds are in the black community is understandably in a state of misunderstanding with those when those type of things transpire. So it didn't upset me because at the moment I didn't even understand. However, I knew that he was victorious in some area of his life, and I could only guess that he finally walked in that house where he used to get his drugs. And so once we got downtown, he said, "Do you have time to take a walk with me?" And I told him yes. And so we went to the back of the building of where we take our break. And he said, "I walked in the place where I used to use drugs." And he said, when I got in there, I saw who I was through the other people. I said, "How did you feel?" He said, "I felt sorry for them. And I wanted to help them get out of there." I said, "That's all you felt?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Bruh," I shook his hand. "Now you clean. You're not an addict anymore." I said, "You know how people always say, I've been clean for 3 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days?" I said, "If you can narrow it down that precisely, you're still an addict. If you refuse to go into the same environment in which you conform to the degree that you started exercising a sense of self-destruction, then that refusing, that resistance is just as equivalent as a temptation." See, when you resist something, a part of you is in the process of tempting it. And so there's a struggle going on. So resisting something, it only implies something is going on in you as a form of temptation to go back in that direction. And that's where the resistance is coming from, the conflict. You're still in conflict. But once he was able to walk in there and love himself to the degree to where he was able to feel love for everyone else in there and wanted the best for them because he was a manifestation of him accomplishing of what was best for himself, that's how you become a winner. Not running from your flaws, not running from what had you captive, but running towards it and conquering it like you did the first day when you decided to face it, get through it. And even after you stop it, you deal with the aftermath of the temptation to go back. And even after you've gotten to the point to where you're no longer dealing with that temptation to go back, because sometimes we bump into situations in life to where we have disappointments and things happen in society that make us angry and frustrated, and sometimes the mind tries to influence you because of your disappointments and your hurt to go back to the vice that was destroying you. But love sets in for that state of yourself. Love sets in, and that keeps you moving forward. go and sin no more. So what's the point of bringing all of this up when Yeshua told everyone to go and sin no more? He told you to move forward and love yourself enough and love yourself to end your plight of self-destruction. If you end your plight of self-destruction in that particular area of living, that's the only way that you may be able to help others in theirs by way of being an example. That way you could stand before people and say, brother, I made it, look at me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And none of you will be able to get to the Father except through my example. Yeshua was sent to show every human being how to be a human being. You can do it yourself. I hear many in church, and I've heard this for years. I need y'all to pray my strength in the Lord. Why you need other people to pray your strength in the Lord? You can't pray for yourself? Didn't Yeshua tell you to go into your closet and pray? What does your closet consist of? Everything that's going on inside of you. I see many line up the pastor say, who needs prayer? Form a line right here. And you fall for it every time. Big long line. Pastor, please pray for me. Pray for yourself. Him laying hands on you, that's not going to change anything. Don't you know that by now? Well, when he laid his hands on me, I started feeling these tingles. It wasn't because of him. It was because of your faith. Your faith has made you whole. It has nothing to do with some other man or some other woman laying hands on you. Pray for yourself. You are your Savior. Now people may say, is he saying that Jesus is not our Savior? You still don't get it. He came here to teach humanity of how to be human beings. He said the kingdom of heaven is within you. I've heard people say his videos, he's always mentioning the same thing. So what? Go watch someone else's content. I'm talking about understanding of how powerful you are as a human being. You're going to go through a period to where once you start practicing this, it's going to start making you a believer. And then you're on the breaking point of knowing that that is real. However, at that brink of knowing that it's real is a very dangerous time. Because that's when the hint of narcissism can easily set in. Make you arrogant and boastful and everything. And then the next thing you know, you become a convert unto yourself. But there's something in the scriptures that even covers that. He even overcame becoming a convert unto himself in the desert. He said, Satan said, I will give you all of these things if you will fall down and worship me. God said, I created peace. I created war. I created good and I created evil. I, the Lord, created all of these things. Now in religion, it is written that Satan was talking to him. And everything he showed Yeshua, everything. cities and wealth and all of those things. You can have all of these things and you will fall down and worship me. Do you really think that he was dealing with Satan? He was dealing with himself. Now people may say, how can he say that? Because he was a human being and that's why he had to be tempted of himself. He had to be tempted of all of the things that were going on inside of him. The same as fear. He dealt with himself. He conquered his inner self. And he had got to the point to where he declared himself the Son of God according to the Spirit of holiness. Well, there goes your Virgin Mary belief. Because they said he was the seed of David according to the flesh. Talking about Joseph. But he declared himself the Son of God according to the Spirit of holiness. He died of the flesh. And as he told Brother Nicodemus, except a man be born again, he will not be able to see and perceive the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven. He came in contact with the Spirit, the kingdom of heaven within him. That was the person. He had to deal with temptation, and then when he got, once he got to the Garden of Gethsemane, he had to deal with fear, which was not a form of temptation. Because temptation is nothing attractive. Fear, the misunderstanding of fear. He had to study fear and understand fear and its intention. And once he understood that the very root of fear itself is insecurity, because fear wants you to be afraid, because fear itself is insecure. So fear wants you to be afraid because fear itself is insecure. As I said before, this is what the stare down is in boxing and other sports. Both fighters are afraid, but the stare down is to make the other one afraid because they're both afraid, because the root of their being afraid is fear, and the root of fear is insecurity. You're able to do it yourself. This is why the Creator said, turn, humble thyself, and pray. Look inward, face everything, and then decide to turn from your wicked ways. Not talking about someone else. And do it in honesty. If you would do this, then I will hear from heaven. Because the Creator can only relate and hear you by way of honesty. It's like the Muslim prayer says, surely I have turned myself to thee, O Allah, striving to be upright to thee, which is the Creator of the heavens and the earth. And I am no longer of the polytheists. Not only the worship of idols, it is the continuation of what is unholy, in which a lot of people set aside as a sit equal to God. Lust, greed. I am no longer a worshiper of those things. And this is why Yeshua had told the rich man, after he asked, how can I enter the kingdom of heaven? He said, you have to give up everything. You have to sell all your goods and give your money away. He's talking about you must let go and detach yourself from what you worship. And you think you identify your human substance to, as far as his wealth and his material possessions. You have to die, completely die to those things. You don't need the prayer of a pastor. You don't need to give yourself to any religious doctrine that was written by man and its versions, because the versions are only telling you that you don't have the facts. There's another thing that a lot of pastors are afraid to speak on, due to the fact that all of the disciples were at all of Yeshua's speeches, and they all took down and they wrote down so-called everything he said. They never wrote down exactly what he said. They wrote down based upon what he said. This is the reason why you have the book of Matthew, the gospel according to Matthew, the gospel according to John. If it says according to this person, you're not getting the facts. You're believing wholeheartedly another person's point of view. You're believing wholeheartedly of what Matthew, Luke, and John and the other person said. That's their version of it. So you don't have it in its purest form. And if you did, it wouldn't be any books. It would just be wrote down what he said. And it wouldn't be Matthew, Luke, John. It wouldn't be different books. It would just be one message. But the truth, the facts, you will only find within. The greatest book that you will ever read is yourself. You have to know that. It's a struggle. It's a lifelong journey. But what you find within it comes out in the way that you treat everyone else according to what you say you believe. And even if it comes out the wrong way, at least you perceive that it's the wrong way and you can do better. So every day in living is dying. Die, that you may be able to live. That's what it's all about. Living and dying. Redemption, resolution, resolve. With that being said, I hope this is understood. With this, I hope this helps someone. Everyone have a good night. Stay human, like I always say.